I'm going to start recording, and it has started. And what's up, Metaverse? So over the next 30 minutes, we're going to speak from different perspectives, from design, development, industry, entrepreneurship, startup, indie, all of it, and hopefully provide some clarity there for those of you who are brand new to this space and are unsure of like what next steps to take to like really fully jump in. So with that, let's talk about project planning. So a few questions that I think we all kind of hear variations of a lot are, one, I have an idea for VR, but I don't know where to start. And it's like a big vision and there's like multiple components and they've completely thought it through. So like this is like a visionary who is like really passionate about this really full-fledged idea, but just is kind of like stuck on what steps to take to go from 0 to 1. The second question that's really huge, I have an idea for VR but I don't have technical skills. What should I do? And so I think that's kind of like that kind of usually overlaps. And then also I have a full-time job and don't have time and energy for side projects, but I'm really interested in this space. How do I build that portfolio? So we all three can speak to a lot of these different questions. I think we'll start with the first one. I have a big idea and I don't know where to start. Neilda, you're really good at organizing and like UXing your life and project planning in general and management. How would you respond or answer that question?
Yeah, so you have a big idea, you don't know where to start. I think the first step that you need to take is figuring out how to communicate that vision. So typically when you're communicating a VR project, it's hard for people to really visualize what you're creating, especially if they've never been in VR. So they can't really imagine what it's like to touch something virtually or listen to something that's happening behind them or anything. So the goal is to like figure out like how do you share that vision with others. So for me, when I started working on Empower VR and self-defense training, I actually took some self-defense training classes and learned them kind of like the process and methodology of empowering self-defense training. And I communicated that with by just like starting with like pen and paper or pencil and paper, kind of like draw like what is it that draw what you see in the scene when you first get into the VR experience, and also draw what's happening around you in that experience. And what really helped me actually was creating storyboards to communicate what happens in every step of that experience. What happens when you first put on the headset? What happens what's that first interaction you go through? How does the user interact with it? So all of that is communicated underneath that illustration. And that's kind of like the very first like rough draft of, hey, this is how my product works. And it doesn't require any fancy technology whatsoever, but if you're capable of using different tools like Figma or something else, then definitely go for it. But all you need to do is just learn how to communicate as fast as possible and as visually as possible.
Yeah, I love that. There's this saying I think that I've heard that I feel like is so on point. It's like, start with what you have, where you're at, and just build it with what you have. So if you only have stick and stones, try to do it with stick and stones. And usually that will take you or attract more resources to build on top of that using better experiences. I think a lot of people kind of get stuck there. Like, well, I don't have this, or I want it to look like this. And it's like this very polished vision. But no really big idea ever started from a polished prototype or a starting point. It always has a very humble beginning. So I love that. It's more about like putting the energy into motioning and acting on building this and letting that attract what you need to continue taking it to the next further and evolve into that vision. I love that. Just to get unstuck.
I actually use those drawings to communicate with my developer, so it was our communication method as well.
Yes, I love it. And so to answer that then, so for those who have, let's say they have a full-time job, so they have this vision, they have this idea, now they can like kind of get started. But let's say they're working full-time, they're drained by the end of the weekend, they just want to rest and relax. Like Kathryn, I feel like you work full-time and I think have worked full-time as well as been like a really successful indie dev. So how do you manage those two particular conflicts of wanting to create, but at the same time having to put your energy into your job?
Usually set aside a certain amount of time, usually like weekends or like some time. I feel like during the week is like it's maybe a few times during the week, but mostly the weekends are my big like helping out time. So doing that type of time, or even like going to like meetups and having that as and using like maybe meetup times as dev times, because you're going to be around people. You'll get that kind of energy of like being around people. I keep on forgetting COVID times, but like,
there's still meetups though. There's a lot of virtual meetups in general, and people are basically meeting up now. I guess I don't know. Conferences.
Yeah, join Discords, and even like if you're comfortable with like being on like a video or a voice call in Discord, hopping into those and working out your ideas, and even maybe like collaborate with someone. I'm a big like a believer in collaboration and like joining a team, because it feels like you're not alone. And you have like a support team, and you're learning from each other. You know, like especially if you have a friend who has like similar goals. Like, hey, we both want to dive into AR VR. You guys can like kind of become each other's like teacher, like co-worker, whatever, like a team, your team.
Yeah.
And working through with them. So
yeah, I think that's so on point. Something that I feel like I work full time right now, and I used to be able to do all this stuff on top of being an entrepreneur, like, because you just have, this would be like my break stuff. Now that I'm working like 80 hours a week at a specific 9-to-5 cubicle type of job, by the time the weekend comes, I'm just kind of feeling very drained and I'm tired. But what's helped me like hold myself accountable to building on the side is like I have a group of VR friends and then we meet monthly for Crafternoon, and so we schedule it. I think it's like every third Saturday of the month, or last Saturday of the month. We'll all hang out over VC, and then we'll all just co-build with each other. Everyone will work on a completely different project, but we'll all like meet at that 3-hour time slot. And now that you're part of it, Kathryn, you're technically part of it, but you have like a million side projects going on. So like, and I feel like that has kept me excited to get into creating when I know other people are going to be doing it, and I could prioritize it. And you get that energy from that group, because it's a different energy. Definitely, it's usually hard to get started on your own, but yeah,
it's kind of good like classroom times. You meet like certain like either 1 or 2 days a week, so as your, I guess, crafter noon class.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as like when you have a hobby, when you really want to learn something, you typically spend your off times on that hobby. So every big project, I hear a lot of stories of how they all started with a hobby, and then you eventually do it. It gives you the motivation to do it during your weekends, do it after work, and also, of course, like hanging out with friends or meeting new people. All of a sudden, when you're having friend time, you're also having hobby/VR time as well. So it's like a 3 birds, 1 stone type of thing.
Yeah, that's so on point. If you don't have the energy to build, which does take energy anyways, build your community, like build a VR community or build a creator community. Just start building on that. And that's exactly, it's as easy as finding an event, going to it, meeting some people, and then setting aside time for that, and then letting that grow your excitement and interest and energy. Like, let that feed you the energy that you would have lost otherwise to do the work. Those are great answers. Okay, so now the third blocker, I feel like we always hear a lot too, get questioned, is, okay, well, I want to build in VR, but I don't have a budget, I don't have the money, or I can't afford the headset. Like, what are ways that either of you, whoever you want to speak to, like when you got started, how did you manage the investments that it needs to take to start building or start creating? Because VR is potentially expensive, probably not as expensive as it used to be, but that doesn't mean that the solutions are actually probably even more practical even now than anything. But what are some ways that you managed that getting started, and did you let that block you, or how did you move forward with that constraint?
Yeah. I know when I started, I guess I actually had I was using some of my savings to kind of fund my VR education. So the first time I ever tried VR was at a conference. So that was the initiation of oh my gosh, there's so much there was so much potential in this technology. Then after that, it went into how do I figure out how to build VR apps? And of course, the question comes up of what kind of computer do you need? Because back then I was playing with the CV1 already, and I was trying to figure out oh, you can't use your Mac. What kind of
Yes,
content
that's
do you
true.
need, or like what do I need to even like get started with that technology? And at that time, it wasn't like Quest. You had sensors. You need like 3 or 4 USB ports. You need to have the right computer with the right graphics card. So many unknowns. I ended up just deciding to like take a class, and where they had the materials already for me to use. Like they already had the right computer. They already had like the headsets, and I was able to like learn while I'm trying on the equipment. So for me, it's like that was like my approach to getting started. But I know that takes some capital. And I'm not sure those that class that I took back then doesn't exist anymore. So for now, if you have like Oculus Quest and you have the right PC, then you can use like when you start building, you can use like open source tools like VRTK, of course, and then you go to Unity. Actually, even without having a VR headset or a computer, you can just go to Unity and start learning from their free tutorials, and they have a lot of content to take advantage of. That way, you can finally just learn and get an intro and see if it's really what you want to do or not. And then from there, educate yourself on the hardware that you need. And then when you start building, you don't need to create your own 3D assets. You could just like buy 3D assets from the Unity Asset Store or CG Trader or TurboSquid or other places. So that's kind of like not really super hacky, but kind of hacky
Yeah.
that I did it.
Yeah. What about you, Kathryn?
So I was in school at the time of when I got into VR, even though I was in school that had like maybe 4 DK2s at the time, so I didn't have access to it all the time, and I couldn't afford buying a gaming PC, so I used the school's computers. But I guess during that time when I didn't have the headset out, at the time I built 360 renders of like an animatic, which is a 3D moving storyboard of my experience, and would do it that way, and then put it on YouTube as 360 videos and kind of get a feel for how people were reacting with that. But I guess if let's say like you don't have like definitely get Unity and try that out. It's free. If you Blender as well if you're interested in the 3D asset side. But it might even be good to even consider looking into maybe like WebXR. Let's just say you can't buy a headset. Maybe gearing it towards WebXR, or even making some sort of like viewable like 360 version just to get a reaction of that and see how that feels. Like kind of prototype it in a kind of hacky way. Even like maybe cardboard. I know cardboard is not like it. People still use it, but it's not like I feel like what it was. Maybe I could be off about that. So maybe doing it that way, if you, let's say you do have like a budget for like a Quest or something, maybe even do illustrations of like a storyboard, do it that way, or
What's Quill illustrations?
So Oculus Quill is a, oh wait, that's right, that would require PC, okay, maybe not Quill. Oculus Quill is like the 3D painting app that, but I realized it's on PC, but there is
There's a few.
There's Tilt Brush that you can use on the Quest. So maybe doing that, and I think even there's another one, Torby, on the Quest that you could probably use as a prototype. If let's just say that you're still kind of learning Unity skills and you have an idea, it might just be good to like rough it out there and then like kind of learn Unity and doing that kind of side by side. Maybe if one day you set aside time to do, all right, I'm gonna like rough out my experience idea and then go to Unity. Okay, I need to learn like just the very basics of X, Y, and Z and do that and test. So
okay, I'm gonna post these links to these tools in below, but it sounds like okay, so I heard a few different things, and I also did the same. I also was lucky that and so I think there's definitely a privilege of being in the right place at the right time, where in my grad program we also had access to an Oculus DK2, which again, if you don't know what that is the second headset that came out specifically for developers before Oculus launched the consumer version of their headsets, and so and during that time, because I had that for free, and I also was in grad school, so I had the structure, I was able to use their computers to build. Unity is a free game engine, so if you're a student or if you're not making a certain amount of money, like you're not a huge profitable gaming business, you can get a free Unity game engine license and build on their platform. They have amazing tutorials on VR and how to build different types of VR experiences or spatial games. So you can do that no matter what, and that's on Mac, on any PC, regardless. I do use PC laptops, so you don't have to have like a huge stationary PC, although if you want that, that's also very ideal. I've been able to make pretty great high quality apps on PC gaming laptops. Now they can be expensive. They can range to $2,000, $3,000, but you can, I think now in 2021, you could probably find a good secondhand, third-hand PC gaming computer. I think Acer headsets are great, Alienware, all that, and for less than, I would imagine, $1,000. I think HP has a VR gaming ready laptop. But if you can't afford that and you have, let's say you have a Mac or you have an iMac, you can still just get started on Unity and start trying development there. Neilda mentioned VRTK. That's an open source framework where you basically integrate that into your Unity game engine project, and it'll kind of give you all these sample interactions, VR interactions that you can just go ahead and launch and start playing with right away. And you can check out the code base from there and see how they did it. And then you can start manipulating it there and watching YouTube videos that are also free on how to build certain interactions and stuff like that. So that's a free way of doing that, and that's available on Mac when you don't have a headset. You can export it to, if you want to use Google Cardboard, let's say it's really important that you want to see it inside. I do think Google cardboards or cardboards in general, it doesn't have to be made by Google. You can find them on Amazon for like less than $10, if not free. And just export it. You can build your APKs, .apk files or apps onto an Android phone. So you can buy an old Android phone, like I think they started working on S8s or S9s or something. So find an old cheap phone. You can try exporting it into there and start previewing it. And that's like a great low budget way just to start getting to the habit of building. And again, once you start building those skills, meeting people in the network, building community around you, you're more likely to find people who are like, oh, you're building XYZ, once they see what you're building, and they'll maybe give you a laptop, or you'd be surprised like what opportunities will come your way that will then just upgrade your environment, your tool environment. So great. Okay, so that's great. So now that and I know I'm going to be conscious of time. So really quickly, as a designer, or and how would you what is it like starting your own business or starting your own company, or going kind of like being self-employed as a freelancer? I think that's like, I love that particular path, because sometimes it can be really hard to find employment when you don't have a healthy portfolio or know the right people, and also the industry, like there's no real clear path to like how to get in. So in the meantime, I feel like self-employment, if industry is your goal or long-term goal, is just such a great way to sustain yourself economically. What does that world look like? And what are things that somebody should know if they're to pursue this path, and how to manage that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from like my experience, it's very scrappy. You have to have quite a bit of grit to get in there. Similar to when you're applying for jobs in general, they're always asking for way more experience than they really expect. So if you don't have the experience, find a way to get that experience. Mm-hmm. Whether that's like personal projects that you are going to be like proud of, like showing, or if there are no startups or companies that can foster what you want to make, do, make it yourself. So that's me coming from a startup, from UX to startup background, and now as like moving from someone in BC, those are kind of like qualities we're looking for in startup founders as well. Can you be resourceful? Can you take initiative? If the opportunity is not there in front of you, it's not easy to get, what are you going to do to get that experience, to make people believe that you can do it? So for me, there weren't that many VR opportunities that I could take advantage of with my very entry-level skill set. So I found ways to use my current skill sets to get into VR. There was, at that time when I started, there weren't that many like UX best practices in VR. So I came in with that perspective. What kind of like UX value add can I provide to the industry and the career that I want to do? So, and then with like my startup as well, self-defense and active shooter response, I wanted to see more VR apps that are very like practical, practical training focus. Just not just beyond games. So that's what made me decide to pursue my path.
I love that. And for you, really quickly, Kathryn, what is it like interviewing in this industry as well too? Like, or have you done a self-employed path, or what is it, or is it, have you mostly pursued? I feel like you've worked on a lot of other people's projects, and so what is that? How do you find them, and what does interviewing look like?
Like, how do I handle interviews?
Interviewing, but also how do you find those opportunities for jobs, especially when you were entry level? How did you procure that work?
I guess like I kind of got lucky with like interviews because I was always approached with interviews.
But via LinkedIn or in person?
LinkedIn.
Via LinkedIn
is great.
Okay.
I would definitely recommend getting on LinkedIn and utilizing it. I know LinkedIn's kind of a weird weird professional network thing, but I definitely recommend doing that. I networked a lot, and just locally, and this is pre-COVID, but I guess now since we're in like COVID times, like definitely network online a lot. Go to like alt space events or different VR events if you can, as well as like I do some AR filters for Snapchat. So I applied to the Snapchat AR residency that happens like I think quarterly or something. So definitely like apply to those things, and that like will help get experience as well, and like potential like freelance opportunities like with like Snapchat, like creating filters or different things. But I always like reached out to like people who were interested in doing projects like that I liked. So networking came in, basically networking online, networking in person. That's what helped me a lot with opportunities and getting an experience.
Right.
That same group thing, like network as well as like do that group thing. So.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, so I love it. So to close this up, we're going to have a full deep dive on designing in VR coming up soon. But I think this is great, just like good high level understanding of navigating the space, getting opportunities, creating opportunities for yourself, how you can do this on a very low budget, how you can make time for that, and we kind of shared some ways that worked for us to do that. And so hopefully we've given you enough ideas on where to get started, how to jump in, and how to manage, the job search. So our next couple of follow-up talks will deep dive into what designing for VR looks like. What are the different things to know? We'll go into detail on the different trade-offs of different tools. We'll also do a different segment for development as well. So definitely stay tuned. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Neilda and Kathryn, for your bringing your expertise to this. And we out here.
Thanks for having us, Chloe.
Awesome.